recently I was hanging out with the kids, and I was reminded what it was like when I first had friends. When you first had that first friend that you got when you were a kid, whether it was at school you met them, or it was in the playground or the neighborhood. And sometimes maybe in a gymnastics class when you were a little kid. But when you were a little kid and you had those friends that would come up, I had a couple times where I literally moved to another place. Every 3 years I would move because of my dad's occupation. And I would move to a new place, and I would always get this one person that I remember in school just about every time. I'd have somebody turn around like this and say, "Want to be my friend?" Aww. Just like that, which is really awesome. And you get to know these people, and you get to grow with them. And you become friends, and you want to do everything together. You want to play together. You're just inseparable. You want to play together, get into trouble together. I remember playing sports with friends that, as a kid, just pick up games of things and having those friendships. And some of those friendships where you would just wanted to be playing all day. You wanted to be out there, until the street lights came on. You had to go home and get dinner. You would do sleepovers. You would, these are things I remember, doing prank calls before you could really, before the internet really took off. You had to find other ways to do things, and nobody had caller ID, so you could prank call people. I remember playing on the internet with my friends and watching funny videos before YouTube even came out. And I'd have these wonderful times together, and I'd work with my friends too. I had a couple friends where we've both had my first job ever. It was one of my friends that we both got the job at the same time. And that was wonderful. We were always together. Not always the best to be working with those kind of friends, but it's better to meet people at work and become friends when you're working with them, because you don't get things done as a teenager. And both times I had two friends, we both started and they both quit and left me to cover their shift one time. So, it's not always the best. Sometimes your friends, they could be really good influences or bad influences. You can be a good influence or a bad influence. I know I've been both in my life. But you cared for your friends, and you really just wanted to be with your friends. You wanted to spend that time with them, and you'd wake up and you'd go meet, you'd ride your bikes together, and you find them. Then as you get older, kids would move away, people would move away. You'd grow apart. You'd grow up, and you just kind of, you'd get new friend groups or just different things. Life happens. Sometimes you go on different paths. And it just, one kid goes to this school and you go to another school, and you don't really see each other as much. You don't have that closeness. Sometimes your friends go into darkness and you're not going to follow them there. Whatever that may be, whether it's trouble with the law or, doing things they shouldn't be doing that you don't want to be a part of, that you couldn't and wouldn't follow. You just grow apart over time. People will let you down. People will let you down. If you trust in man will let you down, including myself. I try my best to not let people down, to be my best, to help people, but I'll still let you down because I'm a man. I'm human. But there's one, God will never let you down. He'll never let you down. Take your Bibles and turn to Deuteronomy chapter 31. We're going to be going into a subject, and I'm going to name this teaching, Bringing God Along With You Through Your Day. And just like a friend, I always remember I just wanted to bring my friend along with me, whether we were, collecting worms or whether we were doing nothing, sitting on the couch watching TV. I just wanted to be with my friends. But my friends couldn't always be there with me. They can't always be there. But God can always be there with you. And in Deuteronomy chapter 31, in verse 6, I'm going to read the NIV version. It says, "Be strong and courageous. Be not afraid or terrified because of them. For the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you." So God will never leave you or forsake you. It says here. Moses, this is Moses speaking by revelation of God in this context. And we're going to look at Moses a little bit. Turn to Exodus 33. We're just going to look a little bit at Moses and his relationship with God and just some little interesting things that stuck out. Part of the renewed mind, one of the processes of the renewed mind is practicing God's presence. It's practicing God's presence. So bringing God along with you in your day, He's already with you. He'll never leave you or forsake you. But by you being aware that He's with you, it changes the outcome of whatever you're facing. If you know God is with you, it makes a huge difference. In Exodus 33, verse 11, it says, "And the Lord spake unto Moses face to face, as a man speaks unto his friend." God's always with you. God is always with you. And you see Moses's wonderful relationship with Him as a friend, a face-to-face relationship with God. And this was in the Old Testament. It's very, very amazing to see that. God's waiting for us to invite Him into our lives. He so wants to be a part of every aspect of our lives. When I was a kid, I used to think about, like, I had a drawer. My life was like a dresser drawer. And I'd have like one drawer was for, the stuff of God. And I'd put the stuff, in that drawer. And then I had my friend drawer. And I had certain different friend drawers. Like, these friends can't hang out with these friends. So I got to have this drawer here and this drawer here. And then, you had your chores drawer and you had your life was just, I thought that life was like a drawers that are separate. But life is more like a refrigerator. You open it up and everything's right there. Everything's touching, everything's connected. It's not something that you can compartmentalize and go, this is my friends and they don't affect anything over here. As my mom and dad will tell you, there were friends that they were like, we don't want you with those friends. Don't, even though if you put them in a drawer and tell us you don't have those friends, they still affect you, usually negatively. Would be the case of that. But life is not like that. It's not compartmentalized. Everything we do affects everything else that we do. And God wants to be a part of every aspect of our lives. He wants us to be aware that He's with us and that He wants to help us with everything. He wants us to have great friends. He wants us to have a great life. Turn to Psalm 16. And for those writing notes, I just wanted to make a point. So I looked at the word presence, as we're about to see, and the word face to face. Moses face to face, he had that relationship face to face with God. In Numbers 12:33, I thought this was noteworthy. It says, "Now the man Moses was very meek." First usage of the word meek right here. "Above all men which were upon the face of the earth." Same thing, same word as face to face. I thought that kind of stuck out to me enough to note it. That meekness, to be able to be face to face with God like that, that's pretty amazing. In Psalm 16, in verse 11, it says, "Thou wilt show me the path of life. In Thy presence is fullness of joy. At Thy right hand there are pleasures forevermore." The word presence here is the same word face to face. The word face and face are it's the same Hebrew word as presence. And in God's presence is fullness of joy. That's pretty incredible to know that if we're in God's presence, there's fullness of joy. And we could be joyful in any situation because we're in God's presence. Now, if God is always with us, and He's always here, He's ever present, He'll never leave us, He'll never forsake us, then why do we need to practice His presence? Because if you didn't already know, you can go through life and not have any joy. Even though God is there, God is with you, and all those things, you can have no joy. But you can practice God's presence, and in His presence is fullness of joy. Knowing that God is with you, knowing that God is a present God. Turn to John chapter 14. Actually, 1 John chapter 4. Now, how do we get into that presence of God? How do we get into that presence of God? Now, these Old Testament believers, they had Spirit upon them, and a lot of them they had to go to a temple, and there were things involved with being in the presence of God. In certain times, Moses went on Mount Sinai. Literally, nobody could go there at all. Nobody else could go there. It said, like, if they set foot on this, to this mountain, they die. Like, you will die. So, like, obviously nobody was doing what he was doing and able to come to God the way that Moses was during his time. But we can, and you don't have to go there, but in John 14 it says, in verse 6, Jesus saith unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes unto the Father but by me. It's through Jesus Christ that we can have that access, like Moses had, face-to-face relationship with God, like Jesus Christ had. In 1 John 4, we see something that's really amazing and really, I think, something that you should be reminded of yourself of every day, every single day. In 1 John chapter 4, verse 4, it says, Ye are of God, little children, and have overcome them, because greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. Life is spiritual. Life is spiritual, and there's spiritual wickedness and darkness going on in the world, going on around us. But it says, greater is he that's in us than he that's in the world. It says, we have overcome that darkness, and greater is he that's in us than he that's in the world. We don't have to do it alone. We don't have to go through life alone. We can do things with God, So, let's spend some time with God as we go throughout our day. Take your Bibles and turn to Philippians chapter 2. Approximately 1/3 of our life is spent working. 1/3 of our life is spent working. If you work 8-hour days, or going to school, or that's a form of work. So we can work with God. We can work with God. As we go to our job, whatever our job may be, we can work with God. I mean, 1/3 of our life is spent working, and another 1/3 is spent sleeping. So we can, you don't want to spend 1/3 of your life with the amount that you have with God. You could spend 1/3 of your life with God as you work. Might as well do it if you're working with God. Philippians chapter 2, verse 13, it says, For it is God which works in you, both to will and to do of his good pleasure. Do all things without murmurings and disputings. That's kind of interesting, because sometimes God be working in you and you're like, that can't be God working in me, But God is working in you to both to will and to do of his good pleasure. And there's a literal translation according to usage of that Philippians 2:13 I'd like to read. It says, For it is God who energizes within you in order for you to desire and carry out that which is according to his good pleasure. It's God who energizes within you in order to desire to do what he wants you to do. And that's kind of interesting, because he's constantly working with you and working in you to the extent that you let him. And as you're more aware that God is there and he's willing to work with you and be patient with you and help you, he's able to help you bigger. He's able to work in situations in your life. As you bring him to work, I need help with whatever it may be. This phone call, or this something I'm cleaning, or something I'm painting, or something I'm fixing, whatever it may be, God's there to help, and he wants to help. I recently started a new position at work, or at least just more responsibilities. I'm just euphemistically saying it's a new position. It's more responsibilities, and I have somebody who's training me. And I really want that person around me pretty much at all times while I'm being trained. I'm like, don't want to mess up what I'm doing. I'm fixing computer stuff, and I don't know what I'm doing, and he showed me what I was supposed to do, and then he left me so that I could do it and figure it out and make some mistakes and have that time to learn. Because if he's always there with me, I'm not really learning much. But God is not the same as that. Because with God, I'm always learning, and he's always there comforting me and helping me. There's times in our lives where we have a job where it's a huge responsibility and we can't afford to mess up. We can't afford to make the mistakes that you may be afraid to make. And God's there with you. And He covers if you make mistakes. He covers and helps you through. I also wanted to point out that it's God that works in you. He energizes within you to do things. He does not use you. He does not make you do things. And I thought about this. If you said, and this is when I was a kid, I remember, if you said that my friend used me, is that good or bad?
Bad.
If I said, hey, he's a user, is that good or is that bad? He only calls me when he needs a ride, when he needs money, or when I have a ride. That's a user. And God doesn't use people. I mean, I remember everybody knew, that's a user friend. That's not a good friend. A good friend is somebody who doesn't use you. They help you. They're not fair weather, all those things. But why would people say, God used me? It's kind of like, not even my worst friend. I don't want that kind of friend. Why would I want a God that would use me? But He wants to work in us and work with us. He doesn't work through us, because I get to choose what I want to do. I get to choose whatever I want to say, whatever I want to do. But He can work in me, and He can help me. He can show me things in my life that can help me. He can guide me down the right paths. He can open doors for me for the best career or the best school or whatever it may be. He's working in us, constantly working in us to will and to do of His good pleasure. And on top of that, in His presence is fullness of joy. So as you're practicing God's presence, knowing God's working, you're joyful. You're working with God, you're working for God, you're getting things done, and you're having joy. Pretty amazing. Turn to 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 3. We'll see a little bit more about working with God, bringing God into our lives. As we bring God into our lives, throughout our days are better. Our days are much more fulfilling. We have joy as we go throughout our day. In 1 Corinthians chapter 3, we'll just get a head start. In verse 6, it says, I have planted, Apollos watered, but who gave the increase? God gave the increase. And this is talking about moving the word, speaking the word to people. You speak the word, another person under shepherds and helps the person, but it's God who's really giving the increase. He's the one that's causing the growth to happen. Verse 7, so then neither is he that planteth anything, neither he that watereth, but God that gives the increase. Now he that planteth and he that watereth are one, and every man shall receive of his reward according to his own labor. Verse 9, for we are laborers together with who? God. With God. Ye are God's husbandry, ye are God's building. We are laborers together with God, and that's the Greek word synergos. We get the word synergy, which means working together. We're laborers together with God. So you can work together with God to accomplish things, to accomplish more than you could by yourself. You could plant stuff, you could water things, but if this doesn't grow, if you're not working with God, it's not going to grow. But God causes those things to grow, and He does the heavy lifting. He does the harder work. A lot of times, all we have to do is speak, or all we have to do is wake up and show up and just start moving. And God's able to help us. He's able to work in the situation and cause us to be triumphant, cause us to be blessed, and the work to get done. But He needs us, we got to speak. We got to do the work that He's called us to do. Turn to Mark chapter 16. We'll see another usage of that same or similar Greek word of working together with. Mark chapter 16. In verse 20 it says, and they went forth and preached everywhere, the Lord working with them and confirming the word with signs following. Amen. As these men went and they were moving and they were speaking and they were healing people and they were delivering people, working with God. It wasn't cross purposes with God. They were working with God and they were moving the word. They knew that God was with them. They knew that God was working in them, and they were seeing signs, miracles, and wonders follow. It's hard to hide joy. It's hard to hide when you have something to be joyful about. It's hard to hide it. I mean, people will think you're crazy. That's okay. But it's hard to hide joy. And as you go out into this life with God, people will see that. People will see, how come on a Monday you're happy, on a Tuesday you're happy, that you have something other than just, it's cold or it snowed today or, now I got to deal with the plows or whatever. How are you able to be joyful? They won't know what it is. They'll be able to see something. They won't be able to understand it because it's spiritual. But we have joy. We have something to share with people, and anybody can have it. That's a great thing. Anybody can have it. Wouldn't it be terrible if nobody could have it? It's like, yeah, I can have it, but you can't really have it. I've had people say, oh, there's no way I could have that. There's no way I could have what you have. Anybody can have, because Jesus Christ made it available. Take your Bibles and turn to 1 Peter chapter 5. Another thing we can do, and these are just a few things we can do with God, but these are things that, as we're going through our day, just reminding you that you can bring God along with you. The other one is pray. Pray to Him. Bring Him into your day by praying. It says in Matthew chapter 6, it says, "For your Father knows what things you have need of before you ask Him." So I always think about this. Why would God want us to pray if He already knows everything? He already knows everything that we need. Everything you'll ever need, God knows. Why would He ask you to pray then? He wants us to pray because then you build a relationship. It's like if you had a room that had all your needs ever that you'd ever need in this room, you'd kind of like, what relationship would you need with God, or would you have with God? But if every day you pray and you see God meet your need or God come through, and you're building that relationship, that tightness with God. In 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7, it says, "Casting all your care upon Him, for He cares for you." Casting all your care upon Him. That's something you can do throughout your day. Something comes up, and that word care comes from the same word as anxiety. Anxiety comes from something causing it, something external or internal, and you just can cast that to God. I don't know what's going on with this part of my job. Cast it to God. Turn to Psalm 37. We can, as we go throughout our day, we can work with Him. We can pray to Him. We can play with Him. Like as we're out playing, as we're out doing what we love to do, we can do it with God. It says in Psalm 37, verse 4, it says, "Delight thyself also in the Lord, and He shall give thee the desires of thine heart." As we delight ourselves in God, He'll give us the desires of our heart. That's a promise. And delighting in God is just being so blessed with God. Like, I'm delighted in God. Delighting yourself in the Lord, and He shall give you the desires of your heart. That one just blows me away every time. Sometimes we don't know what we need. We don't know what's going on. Just delight yourself in God. You can't go wrong with that. Mm-hmm. Turn to Proverbs Chapter 16. We'll see a couple of things here. Another one we can do, part of the reason we sang this is in Psalm 100. It says, "Serve the Lord with gladness, come before His presence with singing." Same Hebrew word as presence, as in His presence is fullness of joy. Sing with God, sing to God, which is really awesome. In Proverbs chapter 16, it says, verse 3, "Commit thy works unto the Lord, and thy thoughts shall be established." Sometimes with that delighting yourself and you don't know what exactly to do, you don't know what, commit your works to God and your thoughts will be established. As you're working, you can commit that work to God. You can commit what you're doing to God, and then your thoughts are established. Sometimes I kind of don't know where to start. If I'm working and I see this huge project that I have to take care of, where do you start? Well, commit the work to God, and then start, chipping away at it, and it helps you get the job done. Doing it with God. We got a couple more. Turn to 1 Timothy chapter 6. 1 Timothy chapter 6. It was kind of interesting because as I was doing this, as I was working on this teaching, I was thinking about what should I teach on. And as I was praying and I'm believing for what to teach, the right thing, I realized I need your help. I'm bringing God into this teaching. How can I teach what I need to teach? And how can I help bring God into it? And it made everything fall into place. And it was really I was able to really get some traction, and my thoughts were able to be established, which is really awesome. In 1 Timothy chapter 6, in verse 6, it says, "But godliness with contentment is great gain." The word godliness is true, vital, spiritual relationship with God. A true, vital, spiritual relationship with God with contentment is great gain. In this context, it's talking about having a bunch of money, how it's deceitful riches and it's fleeting, and the love of money is the root of all evil, and all those things are in this section. But it says, but godliness with contentment is great gain. It's more valuable than money to have that relationship with God and be content. Wow, I have this really cool relationship with God. And turn to Psalm 46. We'll do Psalm 46, and that'll be the last verse that we go to, and then we'll do a little closing. I wanted to end with this because as we're going through our day, stuff comes up. Mm-hmm. Things come up. Trouble comes up. It says in Psalm 46, verse 1, "God is our refuge, and strength, a very present help in trouble." He's very present. He's there. He's there, and we can practice His presence and know that He's there, and know that He'll take care of us. These are promises. This is a promise. He's a very present help in trouble. When trouble comes, He's there to help us. So I'm going to close with a little excerpt from The Bible Tells Me So by Victor Paul Wierwille, the Blue Book, from The Law of Believing. And I just encourage you, as you go throughout your week, as you go throughout the rest of the year, as you go throughout the rest of your life, just bring God along with you. With the decisions you make, bring God along with you. As you go to bed, bring God along with you. As you go to work, all these things you can do as you're driving in your car, bring God along with you. It says, "The law of believing works equally." I'll read a little bit more than I'm getting to a specific. The right believing that's what I'm getting to. The right believing is constantly knowing God's power and presence are in you and with you in every situation. Right believing is constantly knowing that God's power and presence are in you and with you in every situation. How you think about the problem with which you are confronted at this very moment will determine the outcome. If you doubted success, you have, by your own believing, determined its unsuccessful outcome. Apply the positive method of the law of believing to every situation in life, to every problem that comes your way. For if thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. Saying some formal prayer will never release you and bring positive results in your life. You cannot hope, think, or guess at this game of living. You just believe that God is in you and that He is with you always, even to the end of this age. Thank you.